Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we're going to be sitting down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. And on today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing. We have The Conversation, Apocalypse Now, Rumblefish, The Rainmaker, and finally, newly released Megalopolis, directed by the great Francis Ford Coppola, all 5 films. So we've got a 5-director movie study this week. It's going to be great. A big episode, folks. Let's hear what Vin has to say about it. Stay tuned and enjoy the show. Vincent Daly, how we doing over there?
Thomas, how's it going?
It's going okay with me, man. How was your Francis week?
Coppola!
Did you get yourself a case of the wine, too, while you're at it? You can do wine tastings at the end.
Oh. No, I didn't.
Should have put that on as a bonus, actually. A Tommy Two Shoes wine pairing or Tommy Two Shoes wine review.
I would love that.
How's the Coppola portfolio doing on the estate?
Yeah.
Busy week you have. We're doing 5 films.
Yeah, busy week. A kind of a not a stressful week, but a week that just had me reflecting a lot. Kind of like when I talked about when we did, obviously, the Scorsese movie. Why can't I think of the name?
Killers of the Flower Moon.
Killers of the Flower Moon. There's a degree here of just like I've never reviewed a Coppola movie before. I have a lot of thoughts on the directors, so trying to juggle that between these 5 reviews was just kind of a different challenge of the week. But honestly, it was an enjoyable week, even though I'm definitely gonna be shitting on some of these movies.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Not everyone's perfect,
right?
And I mean, this guy has done a lot, and the way his mind goes, and some of the stuff he wants to do,
yeah,
he's really his own guy.
He's his own man.
At the same time, he's genuine, but the roller coaster of this man's career is it's shocking.
Yeah.
It's one for the books.
Absolutely. Actually, now come to think of it, there was one Coppola movie that we reviewed, and it's Finian's Rainbow.
Yeah, we did do Finian's Rainbow.
Yeah.
You didn't like it, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't like that. And, yeah, there's definitely some there clocking.
I was going to bring that up later, but yeah.
Yeah. So then I ripped the Band-Aid on shitting on the director. But yeah, I mean, I think unlike many directors' episodes, I didn't have kind of a huge singular takeaway for all of these movies together.
Yeah.
These movies are very much, I don't know, not in their own lane, in their own silo. They're on their own island, each of them, for vastly different time periods of his career. I will say one thing, Coppola does right by his actors. Throughout the week, I was noticing little daisy chains of actors that he was working with. That was kind of like a fun, 6 degrees of whatever actor. I have at least the main one that I that I found throughout the 5 spot this week. It's John Cazale from The Godfather to The Conversation, Harrison Ford from The Conversation to Apocalypse Now, Lawrence Fishburne from Apocalypse Now to Rumblefish, Mickey Rourke from Rumblefish to Rainmaker, and John Voight from Rainmaker to Megalopolis. So that's
I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah, so
I really like that.
He does right by his actors. That's what I can say about the guy.
And then, of course, did you say Brando from Godfather to Apocalypse?
That's definitely a degree there. But John Cazale, who plays Fredo from The Godfather,
yeah.
he is not like a number 2 in The Conversation, but he's you've seen The Conversation.
Yes,
he's, right-hand man to
Gene Hackman.
Thank you.
And it's our first Gene Hackman film.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
which I'm all excited about.
I guess so, yeah.
So I'll just break down a little bit. We're covering these films. Coppola is known for having potentially one of the best director streaks of all time. So because he has 72 with The Godfather, 74 The Conversation, is it 76 Godfather Part 2?
Yep, I believe so.
And then we have 79 Apocalypse Now.
Yep.
Also in 1970, he was the writer on Patton.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he wrote Patton.
I didn't know that.
So this guy's like crushing it in this decade like never before.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get into some of his later stuff that he does in 83, 97, and 24. And there's still more Coppola films to cover in the future.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Of course, like you said, we covered Finian's Rainbow, which you weren't the biggest fan of.
Yeah. But also, I was thinking of like where Coppola could fit in for like a director's first, and his early stuff, like Finian's Rainbow, just not probably worth checking out.
Right. And basically, and we talked about it last week when we kind of were saying this is what we're doing. So we're covering the conversation on Apocalypse Now, part of that 70s just core incredible run he was on. Godfather Part 1, Godfather Part 2, they're rated on the site. You can see their major scores. They deserve and will have their own specific episode one day. Each film, we're actually going to do a special for, kind of like what we did for No Country Old Men. In our special back in March, whenever that was. They're just very special. They need to be dealt with on their own, kind of.
Yeah.
So we're going to hit the two big ones and have a nice sampling through his career in the decades then, which I like.
I think so. Again, like I said on the end of last episode, I was a little iffy on the Rainmaker slot. Also, in researching Rumble Fist, he releases a movie called The Outsiders the same year.
Yes.
And kind of they're like sister movies to each other.
Different movies, but a lot about the same stuff, I believe.
Yeah, about like greasers and street gangs and whatnot. So I don't know. I was happy with the list this week, but like I said, there was some moments I was just like, I got to take off my knives here. You know?
No problem with that. So basically, do you have any more opening notes, or should we take it back to 1974?
So we can take it back.
1974, like I said, this is 2 years after The Godfather Part 1. It's 4 years after he's writing Patton. This is him working with Gene Hackman, who is a legendary actor. We haven't covered him yet, like we said. I want to cover him more because I think he is great, and we just need to get into him, I feel like. He actually has more films under his belt than you would think.
Really?
When you look at his number, how many films he is.
Interesting.
Big films, he's in a lot.
Okay.
It's called The Conversation. Vin, like you had said, I watched this. Why don't you just kind of get into it, break it down a little bit? What is the film? And we'll take it back and forth.
Well, this was a film that was always floating around on my flash drive, but I never got around to watching it for one reason or another. My interest is simple, and it's exactly what you opened up with, Tom. I mean, this is coming out in 1974, and Coppola's only film between the monolithic Godfather Part 1 and Part 2. But for one reason or another, I never got around to it. And it might be for the better, because I think my appreciation for this film came from how much we studied thrillers on the podcast this year. I feel like I was able to appreciate this film on a level. It gets a lot of hype. It's very, very highly reviewed. I feel like if I watched this before some of the homework, if you will, that we did on thrillers this year, indirectly between the De Palma study and launching Hitchcock Month, I don't know if I would have as deep of a perspective on how things are built up and how the psychological tension is built up here. So
okay, I like that.
Yeah,
because I think that this film does have moments if you're willing to give it. Like if you're willing to sit with the film and kind of get into it a little bit, because as we're going to get into, it can be really quiet.
Yeah.
It could be at times slow. There could be maybe not much going on, but all of that is supposed to draw you in if you let it draw you in.
Absolutely. It's room to breathe, but with that implied that there's a breath to take, you know?
Right.
The Conversation is described as a neo-noir, which might seem odd for a movie in 1974, but nonetheless creates an investigative story surrounding surveillance equipment that was on the cutting edge back then. Gene Hackman plays a reclusive and paranoid surveillance expert, seemingly haunted by the same methods he employs. Knowing people's personal moments makes him suspicious of his own. Awkward, but undoubtedly a genius in his field, he becomes hyper-fixated on a surveillance job that starts to echo a dark event in his own past. His curiosity might just kill the cat, however, when his fascination with the case lands him in the crosshairs of his employer and paralyzed over what to do with his discoveries. Folks, this might not be the most exciting film, but I really did love the subtlety in this, especially for how much room is given for scenes to breathe. The opening tracking sequence is a great example of this, giving us time to kind of absorb every detail of how he surveils someone, how him and his team is able to trail someone's conversation. And obviously maybe not obviously, but it is a scene that is cut back to constantly because this is basically the evidence that he is painstakingly going over and over and over again to find the details that will ultimately be his undoing. A lot of scenes operate like this as well. Gene Hackman's character is in two states for the whole film, I think. Quietly reflective on his own life or obsessive over the details of his work. I think both of these moods lend to an abundance of quiet time in the movie. Camera work and editing gives us long static shots to mirror the examination our characters do with their recording and tailing, and Hackman being a bit of an enigma, we as the audience do the same in examining this main character, trying to peer deeper. Like, what is with him? Also, characters within the film are always examining, hey, well, what's your background on this? You know, where'd you come from? Oh, you're from New York? Well, I didn't know about that. Secrets are kind of a theme in itself of this, which I thought was interesting. And really only comes about from a more quiet film. I don't think this would be better if it was more bombastic. I don't know.
Yeah, the whole film is about searching. And you're right, because the audience, you're really trying to figure out what is this guy, and other people in the movie trying to figure out what is this guy. He's very clearly on the top of his game as far as a gun for hire in the surveillance world. Him and his team are clearly top notch.
Yep.
So a day in the life of watching somebody who would be good and the best at something like that is kind of enjoyable.
Yep.
And like the tech that they use at the time is state of the art, and it's nice to step back then.
Yep.
But it is interesting because you do have to lend yourself to, this is a quiet film. A lot of this is a day in the life of a surveillance guy.
Yeah.
And
that doesn't make it that exciting.
Right. It's a lot of quiet, and then you're dealing with a guy who's an extremely quiet guy.
Yep.
But some things that unfold, I think there's enough there to keep you on a leash, and I think it's a good aspect. When I think of thriller, you can think of more intense ones that really have you really engaged, at the edge of your seat, yes. But this has enough depth in the character that keeps you in, basically.
Yeah, I think I'm with you 100%. It's kind of hard to call this a thriller, especially in some of the comparisons that I even made in the opening of the show. But it's just like it is a thriller ultimately because we are not necessarily on the edge of our seat, but we're drawn in by this character and asking questions. And I feel like the themes of paranoia are so strung throughout all of this. I mean, I don't know what else you would call it besides that,
Yeah, definitely.
I was kind of shocked to see pre-Star Wars Harrison Ford here. Made me wonder how close we were to seeing him in one of the Godfathers.
Oh, that's a good. Probably close.
Yeah,
probably close.
I would be interested in that. It's so funny too. I saw that new Captain America trailer that he's in, and asked, when is this guy gonna stop acting? When is?
Well, did you hear the rumors online?
What?
So he had the thing. I don't know if it was Hollywood thing, but where you put your hands in the concrete and sign your name. And there's all this chatter online because apparently he was struggling to write his name in the concrete, and there were people saying like, "I hope he's okay. Like he totally seems wrong. Like I think he's sick." And now this flurry of stuff saying that like if Harrison Ford is sick and he's aging now really bad and he's not going to continue. But it's like, I don't know. It's just trying to sign his name in the concrete.
yeah. Maybe people are not used to signing in concrete. Maybe it's a little hard.
But he is still kicking it.
He's still kicking.
Not to mention he's still doing the Yellowstone offshoot.
Oh yeah, of course.
1923.
That's probably even more demanding than showing up as a CGI monstrosity at the end of a Marvel movie. So.
And he's in that Apple TV show Shrinking, I believe.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah. Would you? Would I forget that? I don't know. Funny man. But yeah.
Funny. Funny man. But honestly, I mean, I was just kind of shocked in looking into these actors around this. I mean, for Christ's sake, Gene is only about 10 years older than him, and he stopped acting all the way back in 2004 with Welcome to Mooseport.
We got it.
Oh, we got it.
It's for those last week. I threw it to Vin. What's it? His last film, of course. Hello.
We gotta do it. We gotta do it.
Welcome to News 4 with Ray Romano.
Yeah. I mean, Tom, if Welcome to Mooseport isn't on the next birthday episode, I think there's gonna be problems.
I can't because it's going to destroy both Gene Hackman and Ray Romano. I can't have it happen.
Two birds with one stone.
It'll be the last episode we ever do.
That's the last episode. That's great. Seriously, though, I thought this showed a lot of range for both of these actors. In a few years, Hackman would star in more bombastic roles, like the first wave of Superman movies, and with this one being just surprising how introverted it feels.
Yeah, big time.
It doesn't feel like a performance he would take on. And I'll have similar things to say for Mickey Rourke in Rumblefish. It's just like, wow, this is great because it just doesn't feel like him at all,
Right.
And Ford might not have the biggest role, but I really did love him as this like sharp-minded henchman because of the tension he brings about in this part. There's a great scene where Gene Hackman is at like a trade show and he splits away and he's kind of like moody and somber. And you just see Harrison Ford slowly following him, and then he's just planted on a couch with a drink ready for him. And it's just like, oh, whoa, what's going on with this? So, again, these aspects of paranoia that play on in the film are really great. And I feel like these two specifically, also being just the biggest names, were excellent in this.
Yeah.
So. On that note, I would say the psychological side of the tension might be something that doesn't click for modern audiences. I think realistically here, folks, back in 1974, the slight disturbing nature of all this new surveillance tech would have hit much harder. While we're in the shoes of someone aware of this at the highest level, many scenes such as that trade show sequence opened us up to the possibility of how he might be getting trailed. Watching this now, however, I felt this aspect was dulled in modern reality of surveillance. I mean, a great example is a scene of them detailing how a house phone could be used as a microphone spying in the room. Maybe back in the 70s, that was a disturbing thought and a violation of privacy. But watching in modern day, this is something that many households voluntarily opt into with Alexa. So it's like,
yeah,
there's an element there that I again, kind of reflective on the week, I haven't had to come across the concept of we're watching it modern day in a while. And this film, I felt that,
Yeah.
I can respect it. I can see where a lot of the critical praise is coming for this film. And I even had an appreciation for it after a lot of watching this year. But there was something that in that first hour, I didn't feel like it hit as hard as it would back in the day when these concepts
Agreed.
are new and foreign and a little scary.
The tech is just so different that you're right, it feels foreign is the best word. It's because I'm trying to, I don't know why I have Oceans in my mind, the Oceans movies.
Yeah.
There's something about when that still feels modern that, I don't know, it grips you a little bit more.
Sure.
It puts you in it. This is a period piece almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes those moments just feel like boring exposition.
It doesn't feel as heavy.
Exactly. Where I feel like back in 74, that trade show sequence wasn't just a trade show sequence. It was like opening up really like a can of worms of like,
you can do that?
Yeah,
That's happening?
Exactly. Or even like, what's happening to Gene? What's gonna how are they gonna trail him?
Right. And now it's like, NSA just listen to us all.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, what? We voluntarily opt into this. Right. So that's an aspect there. Again, it kind of didn't expect to come across, but I think was important to note, especially because realistically here, I don't know how many people have seen this, especially of our listener base, but also just kind of modern movie watchers. I don't know if they're really going back to the conversation. Mm-hmm. Still good in ways, just dated in others. Luckily, while half of the film I felt was kind of boring, hard to connect with, I think the ending really does bring it home. I loved how much things spiral towards the end and does not betray the vibes of paranoia that we were building throughout the entire film. It's just really that first hour kind of drags, and again, probably caused by just watching it in modern day. Nonetheless, it's really an interesting movie to check out if you've enjoyed some of the thrillers we covered in the last year. I would say between Hitchcock, De Palma, and, even Nolan's first film. This was an interesting movie, I think, because it showed how the thriller as a genre has developed over the years, and for that reason, I think it was worth the watch. With that said, we're going to go ahead and give The Conversation 1974 a 71.
71%, very respectable score, and I think there's a lot of reason for a lot of different people to watch this.
Yeah.
Whether you're a fan of Gene Hackman or you want to go through this epic run of Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah.
Especially at the time, this was a big hit.
Sure.
And if you just want to kind of get into this noir kind of thriller. Because like you're right, you bring up De Palma. I mean, De Palma doesn't come till after this. This is a decade before we really start getting into De Palma. And if he did this, it would have been so much more sex involved.
Yeah.
But I think this is...
Gene Hackman would have been a creep.
Yeah, on top of the creep he kind of already was.
Yeah.
But I think that 70% represents a really good score for today's viewing.
Yes.
And I'm glad that you made that point as well, because there is a lot there, but it's not fully there of what it was if you would have watched it literally 50 years ago this year.
Absolutely. And I think that's also a double-edged sword. I mean, just in the same way the room to breathe the film has in certain scenes that would just never be done today. Certainly would never be done by Coppola. I wish Megalopolis had some room to breathe. There's something there that I feel like I could appreciate even with its age.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why it gets a 71%. Very good. No two shoes, but 71, really good score for this kind of movie.
Why Gene Hackman, of all things? You want to Gene Hackman
I love The Replacements growing up. Him and Keanu Reeves, of course.
Fair.
Falco. So, but then also, I just knew this guy was a really good actor, and I knew he was in big time movies. Also heard he can be a pain in the ass to work with, which sometimes is just a good sign of a good actor.
Right.
And he has this massive catalog of films that needs to be watched, and it's just going to be sitting there. So I watched this. I didn't even watch this for this episode. I watched it like a few months ago.
Oh, really?
Just out of my own curiosity.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that you're covering it now. Because he's just in a lot that we got to get. Anyway, we got more to get to here. So
we got a lot.
So again,
maybe the biggest one of all.
After 74, you have Godfather Part 2, and then in 79 we have Apocalypse Now, a big film. Highly, anyone who's a critic has basically rated it. It's oftentimes very highly regarded. I'm excited we're covering it. I definitely watched it for this week. How do you want to start? I have like the production hell notes of this film.
I definitely get into that a little bit. Why don't I just kind of lean with just like, I don't know, honestly. just some overall strokes to it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's talk broadly.
Yeah. Well, I think for Apocalypse Now, the next three films start a block of movie that sees Coppola pair up with authors to adapt a written story. While he has writing credits on nearly all of his films, very rarely do we see him venture out and do a solo writing project. Megalopolis. Here alongside writer John Millis and Michael Herr, the three set out to adapt the 1899 classic novella Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. But the masterstroke of this project was transforming the setting into the Vietnam War, a good couple of years before these type of war movies became the jewels of Hollywood that they are now. I feel like the only one before this that was really doing Vietnam right is Deer Hunter from 78.
Yeah.
So these are definitely a little bit before the punch of where you get like Platoon.
Well, the war ended in 77,
Yeah.
So there wasn't barely any time to breathe.
Yeah.
And these films were already coming out.
Absolutely. Folks, much like the original Blade Runner, there are a lot of different versions of this movie that might be confusing to jump into, so I want to provide some clarity. Even you made note of it, of just like, hey, which one are you tackling? I really didn't know. So I think my kind of internal compass is that anytime I'm legitimately confused about a movie, I think that's good to to give some clarity to it. There's three cuts. The theatrical cut, which is what I watched for this review, clocking in at 147 minutes. This is the only version I've seen, and especially with the old rating on the website, I wanted to watch what I originally scored, so to put that up against it. Apocalypse Now Redux is essentially the director's cut, coming in at a meaty 202 minutes, almost an hour more of footage. I have always heard that this increases the runtime, or I've always heard that this increase in runtime hurts the film's pacing quite a bit, though. So probably shouldn't be your first watch. And lastly is the final cut, a fairly new release from Coppola himself that tries to find a balance between the two versions. This clocks in at 183 minutes. And the one I wanted to check out the most after this week, because it is, I believe, from what I understand, 2018, 2019, a semi-recent re-edit from Coppola's team. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. I would say if you're looking for a straightforward answer, go to theatrical cut. Maybe unlike my comparison to Blade Runner, the theatrical cut is not the worst version. If anything, it may be the best version because it is refined and tuned down or tuned in.
And probably the most accessible.
Yeah.
In general, and then probably like if you want to go rent it on whatever, Google, Amazon, Apple, it might even be the cheapest one too.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Now, you might be asking, how the hell did they have almost an hour of footage to add to these these different edits? But it is for the simple case that Apocalypse Now was a cursed production from the start. This cursed production had a whole documentary made after it, 1991's Hearts of Darkness. I've never seen that. Some people call it the greatest documentary ever made, but because I haven't seen that, I'm obviously aware of a lot of the controversy with this. I don't know the intimate details, and maybe you can give some perspective to that.
And part of it was helped by Coppola's wife at the time.
Oh, okay.
Was put together because she was on the set a lot for the filming of this and kind of documenting this and had a lot of info of just how it was trying to produce this thing.
Right.
So do you want me to run down just some things?
Sure,
about it?
Yeah. So I know about some of the addiction stuff, but...
okay. Well, you can add some too.
Then, okay. So. There's more.
Well, overall, shooting was supposed to be 5 months.
Okay.
And I think it took 238 days of actual shooting over a year of production, which it was just not supposed to be. Well, the one paragraph in Wikipedia was... Problems included expensive sets being destroyed by weather, Brando showing up overweight and completely unprepared, and Martin Sheen having a breakdown and suffering a near-fatal heart attack on location. Harvey Keitel was, this is some other information, Harvey Keitel was the actual lead in the movie.
Really?
He was playing Martin Sheen's character. They were filming for days. Wow. And then Coppola, reviewing the film, realized that it was not a right fit with Harvey Keitel.
Wow.
Fired him, and then they had to brought Martin Sheen in that last minute.
Wow.
Which is crazy. Hackman, by the way, was supposed to play... oh man, love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Kilgore.
Yeah, he was supposed to play Duvall's character.
Wow.
I don't think he was on set. I think they brought Duvall in before that kind of started.
Okay.
But yeah, because they had these elaborate sets. Then there was a typhoon that hit, so that was a huge problem.
Mm-hmm. And they're filming in the Philippines? They're not actually filming in
the Philippines, correct.
Okay,
yeah, filming in the Philippines.
Which is still not like... that much of it, like well over double the amount of filming days. Not an ideal situation in any tropical environment.
Trying to work out the movements with the government and all the filming and everything. I mean, they're having to recreate sets.
Yeah.
And then, they took a big block. When Martin Sheen had his heart attack, apparently he had a heart attack, had to crawl to the side of the road where a bus picked him up. There was a priest reading him his
the crew?
last... I don't know, but I don't know if it was part of the crew. I have no idea. But the priest was reading him his, whatever, like what a priest does as you're dying kind of deal. Crazy. But basically Coppola said that either we delay shooting again or he just tries to scrounge up enough footage and use his body double.
Wow.
And he said, no, we're going to stop filming and wait for Martin to get better. So there was a lot of problems, a lot of health stuff going on. Like I said, Brando was apparently just very difficult to work with.
That sounds like Brando.
That's why they had to shoot him in so much dark scenes to hide his massive weight. They changed the script constantly. Dennis Hopper, who was in it, and not in it all that much. Apparently, he was on drugs constantly.
Yep.
And forgetting his lines.
Yep. That sounds about right for Easy Rider.
Right. He was supposed to play a different character, and then Coppola saw him on set and what he was doing, and then they put him in this guy's character.
Wow.
The photojournalist kind of.
Yeah.
But,
which I totally didn't pick up that was Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper's also in Rumblefish. He plays the father. And I was like, I don't recognize him in either of these things. And I watched Easy Rider.
Recently.
Yeah.
That's funny. But so those are some of the production notes, some of the shit that they had to deal with, filming on location, dealing with some of these actors that, doubled shooting, or even a little bit more than doubled it.
And tough environment, yeah. I've always been curious about the documentary. I get, again, like...
Apparently it covers it great.
Yeah.
I didn't see it either.
Many people talk about this documentary as, like, the greatest documentary of all time, just for, like, how compelling the subject is, but also, like, how well it's documented. The one thing that I've always known about this production is that, like, the crew, not necessarily, like, top-level stars, but the crew, like... some ridiculous percentage of them, I want to say like 40%, like got addicted to heroin and like have like serious addiction problems. So, it's, that's not great. And maybe that was just because of like this is nothing to do in the Philippines in the 70s,
Right. And the set just got destroyed, so we gotta wait months.
Exactly.
One other quick fun fact, kind of production note, but basically, do you know who kind of tried to pick this book up first?
No.
Was Orson Welles.
Oh, no way.
And then was it RKO Studios or something like that? They didn't feel comfortable with it, so they backed out of him making that, and then so instead he went and made Citizen Kane.
Well, good riddance then, because Citizen Kane is a hell of a movie.
But so that kind of sets it up, just how this film was. I mean, when you hear about these disasters, usually it's very difficult to get a good product afterwards.
Yeah,
and I'm assuming, obviously we have a pretty decent product here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a big hit. So with that, why don't you set up the film a little bit, and we can take it back and forth.
Yeah. So for all that foreplay, Apocalypse Now is pretty straightforward journey, but just diving deeper and deeper into the madness of the jungle. I think one thing I'll note with just a lot of the background here, folks, is that much like The Godfather, Coppola's other work, I feel like that movie's reputation being so great almost creates an inverse effect of people just saying, I'm probably not going to watch it. There's something realistic there about our experience with something that is so heavily praised. And much like I would say with The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, though there is so much to the production and how to jump in to watching the film, just watch the film because it is definitely a must-watch. That madness in the jungle is like no other film, and the Vietnam War is almost a character in itself surrounding the film. Instead of just a setting defining the backgrounds of characters, it's instead a kind of a destination for all these characters landing in the same spot, landing in the same purgatory that warps all of them in different ways. And the film, as a journey, stops along the way at a lot of points to show us how Vietnam is warping different people. How are they reacting to it in different ways? Martin Sheen starts in a madness of his own, struggling with PTSD and a type of addiction that turns him away from civilian life. Wasting away in Saigon, he receives an assignment to investigate and, if need be, kill a commanding officer gone rogue. Colonel Kurtz is played by Marlon Brando. Man, is it one hell of a performance? Though we don't get a huge amount of Brando in the time of the film or time on screen, we do get to know his character, intimately through the briefings our soldier boy is given that is unpacked on our long journey through hell. And hell, the war zone is. Traveling with a small squad down the rivers of Vietnam, we are taken through an escalating nightmare the closer we get to conflict. While earlier in the journey, we come across some bombastic personalities, the deeper our squad goes into the jungle, the more the madness peels back their layers of their mind. Dangerously walking the same path that caused good old Colonel Kurtz to go AWOL in the first place. It's not usually what I start with, but I think performances here are why I come back to this movie and why I think it's really like top notch. This might be the best Martin Sheen role we've ever seen, and for me personally, it's not even a competition. Like I was looking back through his filmography, and I was just like,
West Wing.
right. That's about all he's got.
Well, he's great at The Departed.
Yeah,
as far as leading roles, what is some of his biggest stuff when it comes to leading performances?
I don't know.
I'll have to go through his stuff.
Yeah. But really, his narration is one of the few keys to why I think this film is a must-watch. You'd think a Grizzly Soldier narration might get older after a while, but Sheen is able to draw an outline of his character that we then kind of connect the dots. We then fill in that outline the more we discover about Colonel Kurtz. Now, is his actual acting anything more than just looking shocked and exhausted on screen? I mean, we get some great cigarette hangs from his lip, but no, not really. I think he brings a lot of dread with his physical performance that only further sells the great work he does narrating the film. And honestly, that's where I'm shocked to hear that he was
so
a switch period, because it is such a good fit. Also, I don't think Keitel would do that bad of a job.
I think Keitel would do well.
Yeah,
I think Martin Sheen is so good in this. I think that voice with his voiceover and how his mood is constantly. I think he does a real good job here. You're right. How much is he given to act with for a lot of the film?
Right.
Maybe not a whole lot.
Right.
But whatever he's doing, it's working.
Yeah. Absolutely.
A lot of it's just looking at other people doing things. But
yeah.
it works.
It's observing, and it lets us step into his shoes.
Yeah, it establishes his position really well.
Yeah. I think it's also great for the character because he's not a commanding officer. He's not even trying to be. So, like, moments of tension where you would say, like, oh, give me kind of like a freak out, give me like a... chew someone out on the battlefield or something like that. He's always an observer. That's not his role. His role is this mission specifically, and I feel like there's a realism that comes with that. It's not breaking command or anything like that for theatrics.
Yeah, it's a little bit like in Saving Private Ryan when you have that band of... Like it's like Saving Private Ryan when you have that band of brothers trying to basically going through. They have a mission, and you're going to see a lot of other stuff going on, but they need to keep weeding through. Like Tom Hanks' character, I mean, he's a captain, which is that what Martin Sheen is? He's just a captain?
I think so.
So you're pulling some rank with some guys, but there's always somebody else you're stumbling upon that kind of has higher rank than you.
Absolutely.
And really you're just trying to get through because you've got your very, very specific under wraps mission.
Yeah, exactly. He can't even give them insight to it. For supporting performances, on the other hand, I would say that's where the plot structure of this odyssey, this journey, really, really pays off. Because again, we're just kind of stopping along the way. We're never losing that forward momentum of the plot. And we're just stopping along the way to meet all these different people. We get a quick appearance of post-Star Wars Harrison Ford now, which I always wish he just had a little bit more of a role. He's got a great look with the glasses on in this film, but it's a minor role. It's not not really huge.
Good, though.
Yeah.
Kind of reminded me of the conversation role, honestly.
Yeah, true.
True. He's the guy, he delivers information. He's good. He's high. He's got importance, but he's not the guy.
Right, he's not the guy. Yeah. Boy, oh boy, what can I say about Bobby Duvall? It is crazy to think that. Well, let me double check this now. Have we covered any Robert Duvall on the podcast before? I don't think so.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I don't
think
so.
He was in that, kind of. Yeah. He was in that basketball movie with Adam Sandler.
No. Wait, he was?
What was that movie called? Hustler?
Oh, Hustler, yeah. Or Hustle.
Wasn't he in for, I don't know, like he was in for 5 minutes of the film, maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
We didn't cover too much Bobby. We'll say that.
Yeah. And I would say this isn't my favorite role he's in. That really does go to Tom Hagen in The Godfather because he's like one of my favorite characters in The Godfather. But boy, oh boy, is this an iconic one.
Yeah, got the Oscar for Best Supporting.
Yeah. Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore is only on screen for probably under 20 minutes. I didn't clock that exactly, but it's really not a lot because, again, it's on to the next kind of beat. But it gives us almost countless iconic moments that help cement this film in history. That's where I wanted to kind of lead with performances because I feel like this film is held up by these performances, well-deserved to be held up by it, but that's where it's like, this is an all-time classic. For me, it's always his open coffee cup. It's a small little prop, but a great prop to show this character's kind of mentality on the battlefield, but it's something else. And last but not least, it is Marlon fucking Brando. I mean, my God. My God. I don't want to spoil anything about his character because we get a lot building up in the film. I feel like the film, because of these like briefing sections while they're on the river, there's like we get a good picture of what we're stepping into, which is great.
It's true. We get to know Brando more with him off screen than him on screen.
100%.
Which is weird thing. It's a weird thing for a movie.
Right. I think it's an incredible payoff for the end of this film. it's truly up there with his best work, which makes me sad to hear that he was still just as much of a diva, just as much of a problem on screen.
Well, it's so much money.
Yeah,
they gave him $3 million, $1 million up front for 3 weeks.
That he promptly ate.
Yeah, 3 weeks of work only. And they had to redo everything kind of with shooting him with the weight and all that and changing up the script.
Yeah.
But the product we get is great. And same deal with Duvall. He's not in it a lot at all. At all.
It's like it's a Darth Vader syndrome where it's just like the impact on screen is almost regardless of how much time we're getting.
That's a very good. Now, as far as impact of this film and lines go, that goes to Duvall.
Yeah, true.
Just with the lines given, that's what you remember, the music playing, of course.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Brando just has just a psychoticness.
yeah.
That's lasting in
the
that
madness
character.
payoff is in Brando.
Right.
Yeah. His monologues, the shadows he works with in the scene. I know you say that's
to cover his fat.
Yeah, but I think he does it. Like he kills it. I love the shadows in the scene, and just the sheer sweat beating off of his bald head. It's just perfection.
So much sweat. Martin Sheen.
Martin Sheen.
I feel like there's just a guy. I can see the guy off camera with a little spritzer. It's like you're feeling.
Oh, it's so true. Maybe that's why he had the heart attack, though. Maybe that was real sweat in the Philippines. But yeah, just something else. I mean, the performances, that's the skin in the game, folks. I would say every time I watch this film, I come back to writing and narration being my personal favorite part about this, though. Overall, the film, there's just so much lingo that plunges you into the war front, the era, and then most of all, the mentality of these soldiers. Zapped in the head, unasked that, and of course, my absolute favorite coming from Robert Duvall, Charlies don't surf. I think in this way, the script does a lot of heavy lifting in immersion because it becomes less about kind of like an anti-war message, maybe something like Full Metal Jacket, maybe something like All Quiet. And it's more about these characters directly and what is happening in the war to cause them to shift off their path. I think it's also brilliant of why we get a crew of rookies on the boat sailing down the river for most of the film to see how these otherwise unaffected youngsters are now being changed by the war. And that's what I mean by where the Vietnam War is kind of a character in itself. And I feel like this film leans, again, less away from kind of an anti-war message and more like kind of cautioning the extremes of psychological warfare, and that sword cuts both ways. And I feel like that's, again, where this is a must-watch because that's a unique message to Vietnam specifically, but a unique message in like other like heavy hitter war films. You know what I mean?
When it's either not so much pro-war, but it's just like soldiers doing really cool things, or you're getting a very anti-war film,
right?
Again, Saving Private Ryan, incredible war film. You have this great journey of these guys, and you feel coming away from it, feeling a certain way. Maybe not an anti-war film,
right?
And then you have something like
heroic for Saving Private Ryan,
right? Exactly. And then, like you said, with All Quiet on the Western Front, just made as an anti-war film, largely,
not to glorify. And this is somewhere in between that, but also maybe in its third kind of leg, going its own direction.
I like that a lot. Yeah, I like that a lot.
So I just when I look at what like the film is actually trying to say per se, I just don't know if it fits neatly in the box of how war films are made, and that's why it's so unique, and that's why it's
it's headier. It's too heady.
Yeah.
to be just put in a box like that.
Absolutely. This movie has some impeccable pacing because before you know it, we are off to the next leg of the journey. Downtime on the boat is used strategically to fill us in on Colonel Kurtz and the mission, and because that narration sounds so good, it kind of doesn't feel like exposition at all. Like I'm all right with the exposition here because it's just like, wow, this is so compelling as far as like unpacking the mystery of this Colonel gone AWOL. And as well, Martin Sheen just like killing it as far as the narration.
Can I say why these scenes work so well
Sure.
too? And because they really are pivotal to the movie to try to learn who this crazy guy is that they're chasing after. It works because usually when we hate deposition dumps, it's because they're unrealistic scenes. Like this would never happen in real life. You just ask a question, then you get an answer. Question, answer, question, answer.
Sure.
This is like you said, when there's downtime on the boat, he's reviewing his case. He's reviewing the guy he's after to study this man. And I think it's very realistic.
Yeah.
So that works, and compared to just these dumps of exposition that are useless and don't feel real. You know,
Absolutely. I also think, as far as what goes on in the backgrounds of these scenes, you're either matching this with filled to the brim with breathtaking location shots, or even more insane set work. That obviously is just like it's all over the movie, but it's great that it's in these little moments as well.
Yeah. I was going back to this again. I was really loving the sound, just because we've been watching a lot of old movies lately. I mean, going back even with the John Wayne study, and I know it's 79. We're almost in the 80s, but I just thought for how exterior this film is and real location stuff, I thought the sound was done really well.
Sure.
I was just impressed by it.
Yeah. It had me think about Bridge on the River Kwai as well, as far as that type of outdoor production, and like big explosion set pieces. Obviously.
Not a bad doubleheader.
Yeah, that isn't a bad doubleheader.
Because is that Korea? No, what war is that?
That's
Is that World War II?
No. I think that's Korean. I want to say.
This is so bad.
That's bad. We both.
No, it's got to be World War II. It must be World War II.
It must. It's got to be.
Okay.
Yeah. It is now. But yeah, good doubleheader. Slowly but surely, though, the film comes together in a way that makes it about as close to timeless as possible. And while there are some minor elements over the years that have made me personally question if it was worth it for new audiences or if they would be able to connect with the film on that level, that's really where I kind of fall into a tough relationship with a lot of Coppola's films of like, who's it for and how to recommend these movies that oftentimes are very personal, and in Apocalypse Now's case, there's like nothing else like it. So you really can't put it in that box. I think another great example is the soundtrack being done by Coppola himself is always one that kind of comes to mind, where it's just like, wow, this is a little bit of a weird soundtrack, but I like it.
Yeah,
and then
it works.
It's Coppola doing it. So I don't know, maybe there's the budget decision behind that. But watching it this time, the qualities that made me question whether a new watching experience would fail or succeed were deafened by how much of the film not only gets right, but truly is in that one-of-a-kind aspect, one-of-a-kind category. We're going to go ahead and give Apocalypse Now, 1979. If the old score was an 85, it is still an 85. Must watch.
85% a must watch. Anyone who's coming to the podcast for the first time, we say 65 is a good movie, 75% is a great movie, and 85% and above is a must-watch film. It's good at hitting enough marks on enough levels, basically for audience to see this. It's watch this before you die.
Absolutely.
85% great score, Vin. Great score, and a two shoes, two laces.
Wow,
on this one.
full laced up.
Absolute
great.
Tommy two shoes, because it's just that good. I didn't expect to almost give it. I knew because I know about it. I've seen it before, and then watching it, it was over, and I'm just like, I want. This is really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So two shoes, two laces, and I also think, which actually doesn't happen that often. The last one that I gave it to was
I'm trying to think.
All Quiet on the Western Front.
Oh, yeah. Was it All Quiet?
No, I think it was for the Color of Money.
Oh, nice.
Which is awesome. Actually, I'm so down with that.
Hell
If I had a higher score, I'd give it for it. But this is that good. It holds up that well. And it's one of the films where, like you said in the beginning, everyone's heard about it. You might skip over it because I know it's good. I know it's good. It's another Vietnam War movie.
Yeah.
No, you should watch it. I will say, as a double feature, if you do want to watch something after this, if you're in that mood of jungle and wartime, Vietnam War, I think jumping from this straight to Platoon is a great way to go.
Sure.
Platoon comes out 7 years later in '86. You now have Charlie Sheen in it, Martin Sheen's son.
Yep.
And it's a very good movie.
Yeah.
With a very good rating as well.
Absolutely.
On the daily ratings.
Yep.
And that's also jungle-based, where this is river-based.
Sure,
as
and more heroic to it. If you find maybe you're a little bit more down coming off of Apocalypse Now, maybe the Platoon is the way to go.
Maybe. You're not going to be...
No, you're not. It's not like a feel good.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's something there that...
I feel like Willem Dafoe has something to say about that.
It's not feeling too good.
But yeah, anyway, 85% for Apocalypse Now, Vin. Excellent. So glad that we were able to cover it on the podcast.
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah, absolutely.
By the way, weren't tempted to... That was an early rating we did. We probably rated that about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
No, wasn't hard for you to keep that score. Did you feel the need that you almost budged it?
I definitely felt the need to bump it up. I think why I want to keep it put is because watching this, I really didn't feel any different. It was just like,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yep. I know where this is going. I mean, I don't know. There was something there that I felt exactly how I always feel about this movie when I watch it. There wasn't an increased appreciation. There wasn't a diminished appreciation. In the game of what makes it 85 to a 90, I don't know. It may sound like nitpicking and whatnot, but I feel like it's in some of the little moments of on the boat itself. There's a scene where the crew kind of freaks out in a bad way, and it feels messy. Not in a focused way. It feels messy where I'm thinking, oh, this was probably really messy to shoot, and they just had to kind of scramble this together.
Yeah, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
And that's why this almost got one lace, not two laces on it, for that specific reason. It really wasn't until the movie was over, and I'm looking at the complete project, and it's like, okay, I'm going to bump it up.
Sure.
Just because, even with its flaws, I think for just what the movie is, I don't know, it gets into that.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets, two shoes, two laces, basically you're 85 and up, essentially. So,
yeah.
But it isn't perfect.
Yeah, and it's tough because I think for me above 85 or 85 even on the dot is still just saying it's like excellent. You know what I mean? I almost don't want to take a razor to it because then that's exactly why we don't do spoilers on the show. I don't want to just scrutinize every little thing to this. I feel like Apocalypse Now is an experience in the sense that it's not about the little moments. It's about you're going on a crazy journey.
Yeah, it's about the journey for sure.
You're almost exhausted by the end.
Excellent. 85% Apocalypse Now, folks. Give it a watch. And with that, let's just see how his career continues here. Is this the direct next film he does?
83, no, well, technically Outsiders is the same year as 83.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so all right. So 79, Apocalypse Now, 1983. We are covering Rumblefish. So these next two films I'm in the most dark about, probably.
Ditto.
And one, why did you choose these? And basically get into them a little bit. What are they about?
Both of these were just trying to fill out the 5 spot, really. I've heard of Rumblefish before. I never heard of the Rainmaker. But it was really just trying to, Coppola himself doesn't do a lot of work once we get into the 2000s. He does weird movies that I honestly don't know. Like they're fairly recent too, like in the 2010s, but I don't know how they were marketed or who they were for. Or I've never seen them, obviously. So I was just trying to get like some tent poles of his career.
I like
for
that.
the 5 spot. Rumblefish specifically is based on a book of the same name and shares the author, S.E. Hinton, as the co-writer here. This is a bit of an anomaly as Coppola directs 2 films in 1983, both originally written by Hinton, and similar in subject matter. Like I said, 1983's The Outsiders is a more traditional take on adopting greaser, street gang type of story, where Rumblefish is a whole different animal, often being extremely dreamlike and has its sights set on more of an ethereal experience despite still being about street gangs. This artistic take on the story is exactly what Coppola wanted, speaking about his desire to break from conformity and even continuing to work with some of the cast coming over from Outsiders. This bolder approach, though, turns out to work really well in some areas and fail in others. I think it was an excellent slot for this week, if anything, to show that Coppola, even while working on films, doesn't want to be put into a box, doesn't want to be defined neatly.
Absolutely true.
Yeah,
absolutely
and maybe
true.
That's the trademark. Maybe that's the takeaway.
I think he does what he
for.
wants. And, if he wants to go do a winery, he does it. If he's kind of broke and he needs to do something with Disney, he'll do that.
Yeah.
But it's about kind of just taking his journey and his projects he does put care into.
Yeah.
Whether the outcome is good or not, this guy is like, he does care.
Yeah. Absolutely. But this also marks a little bit of a decline. Let's just say nothing's reaching an 85. Rumblefish is a black and white coming-of-age drama that is moody, anarchistic, and tragic. Matt Dillon plays Rusty James, the younger brother to a legendary street gang leader simply named the Motorcycle Boy, played by Mickey Rourke. Living in his shadow spotlights how much dumber and reckless Rusty is, and we see this directly when the Motorcycle Boy returns home unceremoniously. While the whole gang is excited to see his return, something troubles the older brother. A lingering feeling that Rusty is just too immature to understand. Maybe someday Rusty will grow out of his childish ways, but for now, he wants nothing more than to return to the glory days of the gang, a feeling fueled by his brother being at his side, even if his mind is 1,000 miles away. I mean, I think this film wins a lot wins a lot of points when it comes to the holy trinity of pacing, runtime, and rhythm. It's a breezy 94-minute runtime. A small, streamlined story about two brothers, but best of all, uses its time wisely. Despite many scenes drifting into like a dreamlike state, we're always getting insight into one of the brothers. This film makes excellent use out of the walk and talk scene. If you're going to give exposition about characters in the world, make sure you are moving that camera. Oftentimes, when Rusty is the main focus on screen, the dialogue is intentionally stupid as well because the character is stupid and intentionally stupid.
Right.
So that can be a little tough as far as crafting the early moments of your film. But these scenes work so well because they are presented in a dynamic way to keep our interest, even if the dialogue itself may be intentionally lacking or even the characters themselves lacking. And that kind of walk and talk scene, especially after coming off of talking so much about these kind of river debriefs in Apocalypse Now, that's a walk and talk, basically. They're moving, and we're getting just info dumps to keep us kind of interested, keep us out of boredom. And I think very similar here. I mean, more directly, walk and talk scenes are used to great effect and used in a lot of scenes all over this. I think this also has an awesome cast. We got Nick Cage 4 years before either Raising Arizona or Moonstruck. You know, clearly his uncle was giving him a shot. Tom Waits is the owner of the Billiard Hall Hangout and is just cool as ever. I mean, man, Tom Waits.
He might do the music for this film.
No, that's Stuart Copeland. We'll get to that.
Oh, okay. I will say, I think Tom Waits does do music on one of his films.
Oh, really? Okay.
But okay, I'm excited to hear about that.
Yep, we'll definitely get into the music. Diane Lane, wow. Drop dead gorgeous.
Playing Patty.
Oh, my God. I mean, holy shit. She is also one of the talents carried over from the production of Outsiders. I mean, drop dead gorgeous. I've Diane Lane,
huh?
Yeah, new crush. Diane Lane from '83. Additionally, Coppola carries over Lawrence Fishburne, coming over from Apocalypse Now.
Yep. Good in Apocalypse Now, by the way. We didn't really talk about it.
Yeah,
very,
absolutely.
very young. Did good at playing the young guy on the boat.
Absolutely. He's only 18 in Apocalypse Now, so you can't really, ask too much of him. But, he's not like a bad kid actor by any extent.
Right.
So he's really coming into his own here as well. Actually, his role in this, I mean, different decades, but had me feeling like, man, this was almost like made for Sam Jackson. Had me kind of thinking about, like, did Sam Jackson kind of eat away, cannibalize Lawrence Fishburne roles, towards the 90s? Different reality of maybe Lawrence Fishburne would be in all the Tarantino projects. So, my favorite actor here by far, though, was Mickey Rourke. He is downright unrecognizable in this, and unrecognizably young in this. Just brought a totally different vibe than I was used to. Jump forward to The Rainmaker, and he's exactly the character I expect him to be.
Okay, sure.
He's got a crazy beard, or he's got crazy facial hair, he's wearing sunglasses, he's got the cigarette in mouth. Here, man, I really want to give hats off to Mickey Rourke because, I feel like he really tried to either act out of his comfort zone or maybe just earlier in his career was just, not rooted into what his persona would be.
Young
this is a wide range of the type of character that he plays, and there's a certain vulnerability to Motorcycle Boy that we just don't get a lot of in his career, but nonetheless great to see. I would put, honestly, his performance here side by side with The Wrestler.
Wow.
It's that same type of vulnerability.
Big talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's good.
That you just kind of don't expect. So, okay, I got to buckle in.
Okay, well, real quick, just on cast, he also carries over Dennis Hopper.
Yes.
And just for the people who didn't maybe know that comment that you made, Nicolas Cage is the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah. He's a Coppola.
In real life. Yeah. So there's connection there.
Yeah.
But, okay, go ahead. You can take another deep breath.
Yeah. I would say the black eye on this and our next film is very unfortunately the music. Both sound completely different, but fail for the exact same reason that they just do not match the tone of this film. It feels conflicted in nearly every scene. It's such a shame. Stuart Copeland does the soundtrack here, and don't get me wrong, I might not love The Police as a band, but as a composer and drummer, the guy's got a lot of talent. He's kind of a legend in the industry.
I hate The Police, by the way. You know this about me, right?
I think so.
Okay.
I didn't know hate The Police.
I hate The Police.
Well,
so I'm on board with you.
Yeah. But I feel like there's that's honestly like a dialogue we have a lot on reviews, that these music talents sometimes can do even better on the composer space, on composing music for film. But the point I'm trying to make here is Rumblefish is an intentionally black and white movie about gang violence. Tom, let me ask you, do you think getting the guy that did the soundtrack for Spyro for the PS1 sounds like a good match here?
Nice.
How about the guy that did the music for Good Burger? That sound about right? Does that sound like a match?
No, it does not.
Unreal. I think the soundtrack on its own, it's okay. It's not bad. And certainly some of the percussion work kind of matches the chaotic lives of our characters, but I am sorry, anytime we get a semi-reggae beat playing in the background of a scene that is supposed to be these, like, has-been past their prime 70s greasers, it just seriously lost me. Just a very, tonal conflict. And unfortunately, it is the same thing in Rainmaker and a little bit of Megalopolis as well. There's just, no hate on Copeland. I love Good Burger. I love Spyro. I think he did the Amanda Show for Nickelodeon. But
that makes sense, this guy, then, yeah.
Those three,
yeah.
let that scope of let that be the scope of what his sound is. And Rumblefish, a black and white gang violence film, is
just does not fit. It does not fit. It doesn't surprise me with this guy.
Yeah.
It's from The Police.
I really didn't know you hated The Police.
Also,
that much.
there's something, growing up, I always hated him.
Sure.
They always sticks in my crawl. I love the retro love for Good Burger, too. Where did that come from? I'm the one who's been repping that for 2 decades now.
It's true. Maybe we gotta clock back and love Good Burger. I don't know. That's also a connection to The Godfather.
Oh, my God, that's right.
Tessio's in that. Oh, man.
But really not doing. And this is it's destroying the movie.
Yeah. What is otherwise a dream, moody, gritty type of, I don't know, there's a longing this film has. It's melancholy. It's depressing. There's things here that I say, wow, Coppola is really, this is not the cookie cutter side of what The Outsiders looked like, or just like a love letter to the 50s, like American Graffiti or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, there you go.
There's something here that he was really trying to make an artistic film, and man, it's just Copeland is killing it in a bad way. He killed the movie, and it's tough. It's tough. I would say what makes all the difference here is the filmmaking itself. The hand of Coppola's directing is felt all over the story because it's presented in such an interesting way. It surprises me to find that the use of black and white is very deliberate and actually connected to one of our characters that makes you kind of question which brother we are seeing the story through. I also originally thought, like I said, was going to be some kind of throwback love letter to like American Graffiti or something that he has already done, because that's exactly what The Outsiders was. But I was totally off. This is far more dreamlike and trying to capture something special, and it feels personal in a way that I wish some of his later films were still able to be. But the unfortunate truth is that the 80s and 90s were decades Coppola didn't connect the dots on his own projects, and dreadfully something that we see continue for his return in Megalopolis. We're going to go ahead and give Rumblefish a 67.
Okay, 67. Still not a bad score, though.
Yeah, not bad. There was a lot going right with the film.
It really just that music is what actually made it a worse score. Put it in the 60s.
It killed it. There's some Spyro beats to this, and it's just I don't know if this is the right vibe here.
Okay, I mean that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm almost shocked that it got that good of a score then.
Yeah,
it's a good movie.
Like I said, the tipping point is the filmmaking that's going on here, and again, it feels I can't really compare Rumblefish
That's good.
to many films.
And I like they make the note. One of the questions I had, that's cool that the black and white actually made, it wasn't just an offshoot. Let's just make it a black and white. Let's be edgy. It actually,
sure.
you know, like you said, it actually had effectiveness to it, which is cool.
Yep.
But, okay, so that was 1983. Let's go forward into the 90s. This is late 90s, 1997. This is called The Rainmaker, and I'm sure you've got a lot to get into as far as Matt Damon is concerned and where he's at in his career.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the same year, 97, is when Good Will Hunting comes out.
Yep.
He has one big film under his belt yet, but he's still a little boy.
He's a little boy in this.
But 1997's The Rainmaker. You were the most unaware of this film. So just dive into it for us and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. Well, as far as partnering with successful authors goes, this was written by John Grisham, one of the most acclaimed paperback writers next to legends like Stephen King and Tom Clancy. I've never seen any of his film adaptations, but the most famous ones that stick out to me are The Firm and A Time to Kill. From my understanding, all of these are meaty, 2-hour-plus 90s films that all can kind of be clumped together as failed Oscar bait, unfortunately. You know, much like Rumblefish, I was interested in seeing what Coppola would bring to the table with one of these, especially being so seasoned working with authors. But unfortunately, this does not escape that reputation of failed 90s Oscar bait. I mean, really, all three of these films, The Firm, Time to Kill, and The Rainmaker, really, I mean, like, they are shooting for the stars. They're shooting for, like, cleaning up the Oscars and awards season.
Some of them hit okay. I feel like The Firm has a good reputation.
Yeah, right. And Tom Cruise, that's one of, like, supposed to be one of the better Tom Cruise projects.
Right.
Yeah, I think they all fall into the same little category. Like many of Grisham's projects, The Rainmaker is a legal drama driven by characters, not necessarily a singular case itself. It's a big, sprawling story with a message that only the 90s could produce. Matt Damon plays Rudy Baylor, a young rising talent looking to cut his teeth any way he can, becoming a lawyer. His ideals of justice are contrasted with what he has to do to stay competitive, a true underdog story if there ever was one. He meets all walks of Southern life, most importantly a love interest connected to a domestic violence case, as well as his business partner, played by Danny DeVito, who is a failed lawyer himself. When he is put up against any opposition, Rudy stays true to himself, whether it be crooked influences in his life or his well-connected rivals in the courtroom, but Rudy will need every ounce of luck when he gets emotionally invested in a case against a huge insurance firm that will throw everything they have against him. Flashback to 1997, and Matt Damon is having one hell of a year.
Yeah.
We got all in the same year, Chasing Amy, Good Will Hunting, and this.
Chasing Amy.
I'm not huge into Chasing Amy. Yeah, but like,
it's a title. It's a title.
That's a big one. Go 1 year further, we get Rounders and Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
That is how you make a debut on the screen. Wow. Now, I can't say I love Damon's Southern accent work here, but I think he did a decent job simply because we never really leave his perspective. Like I said, this is a meaty 2-hour-plus story that gives him plenty of moments to define his character and define kind of like the morals of his character. And I think he was able to do a good job in that regard. One specific aspect is, alongside Grisham's writing being very legal-focused, inside the courtroom there is just a barrage of technical terms, what the defendants are throwing at them as far as smokescreen. And Damon is not only able to juggle that technical know-how, but also able to do so in the shoes of this character as like an extra layer there. The character's a rookie. We see him getting him passed for the bar. So there is layers to the performance of, like, not only does he have to act like a lawyer,
right,
but he has to act like a rookie lawyer as well, which I think he was able to do a good job. But definitely done by the runtime, definitely given to him by just like he is without a doubt the singular character, our main character here that we're focused on. And there's just a lot of time with him to, even if maybe an accent here and there doesn't work, there's a lot of moments that work to that he's able to define that character. Sadly, I didn't really care for the filmmaking itself here. This is where we really dip off, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah. Which, and again, the exact opposite of my intentions. These director 5 slots in general are really designed, even like with a Shyamalan. I don't bring these up. I don't do these to just like shit on the director. I want it to be a spotlight, just like, hey, this is what they do, and this is how they maybe landed there. It's something I've really had to grapple with our new film this week. But the realization I had was that the Coppola that I love just might disappear at some point. It might go missing. The 90s is a decade I should have known I'd be at odds with our director. I passionately hate The Godfather Part 3.
Yeah.
I can't really get behind his take on Dracula for all that film's issues. That's a real mixed bag, but that film's got more issues than good going for it.
Okay.
And now this is definitely added to that list. I'm not joking. This felt so cookie cutter and so safe. I was shocked this came from anyone of note, no less Coppola. I mean, really, really shocked. Scenes are constantly blurring together, which is a critique I have on editing, but also in how a director, goes about an adaptation. The entire film feels predictably next scene to next scene and goes on, and feels, I don't know, I can only imagine in like maybe a storyboarding process, it was literally just taking every page of the novel and just making sure that you hit every beat.
Yeah, it was a little too safe.
Yeah.
It like makes it up a little bit. We know we're in a book here, but
yeah, cookie
make
cutter
it
as
into
well.
A film.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do something in the moments that I don't know. Make it feel like it's elevating the story.
There
in
you
some
go.
way.
Yeah.
Even in impactful scenes, it just feels like we just can't rest a single moment. I've never read the book here, but I feel like this again. There is something that was done in the process of adapting this. Maybe Coppola alongside Grisham. It just feels so strung together, so beat to beat, that it results in an experience that almost has no identity.
Wow.
To
Okay.
it.
Interesting.
Nothing was just done to elevate that narrative plot, and at worst, it feels like this was a studio plug made to simply call it John Grisham's The Rainmaker for easy money. Also, by 97 terms, Grisham is well established, firms under his belt. I think Time to Kill is under his belt as well. So this movie opens up with John Grisham's The Rainmaker, almost superseding Coppola on this. And boy, does it feel like that in the film as well. Like I said in my last review, the music is a rough spot on this one. But honestly, unlike maybe some of my appreciation for Coppola, I outright hated the music to this film. It is incredibly sloppy in what tone it wants to convey. Overall, the score is like a 3-way split between tense, noir, kind of jazzy moments, romantic beats when the story needs it, and worst of all, these like clown-like melodies that ruin any scene it's in.
Oh, man. Because those first two sounds like 90s, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially
And
90s, like law firm type stuff. That's fine.
100%.
Doing silly stuff, you got to watch out.
Yeah. Even just juggling like the different genres to the score itself, that feels 90s, you know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
But any type of playful or comedic moment in the film is accompanied by this like horrific walking tuba that is literally like bum, 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 bum. Like it's terrible. Oh my god, it's so bad. To call this a big Oscar-grabbing 90s soundtrack would be an understatement. This is the template. By 97, this is like now solidified.
Really?
Yeah.
Even with the silliness, you think that this is too common?
Yeah. It just felt so of the decade and so inappropriate. Elmer Bernstein did this. Don't get me wrong. He's got plenty of accolades to his name, but it was just the worst. It was just the worst. Maybe a case of him being a little bit too past his prime to work on this. I'll maybe give some slack due to the fact that the movie does juggle a lot of moods, being so broad in the story following this character's life. But otherwise, it totally killed the experience for me. In addition to the very bland filmmaking. Folks, The Rainmaker is a courtroom drama without just a lot of edge to it. The tone it wants to capture are those Forrest Gump vibes, where we know it all work out for our underdog in the end. But I have always taken issue with how that specifically erodes at stakes. I think a great example is Jon Voight's character here. At first, he is a cunning, slimy lawyer that is a perfect match for Matt Damon. But as the story goes on, we see him kind of tripping over himself in sloppy ways and being the butt of the joke rather than being menacing. And most importantly, rather than being sharp-witted competition. Compare this to someone like Kevin Bacon's character in A Few Good Men, and you will see how crafting the opposition in a legal drama doesn't require one side to be good and one side to be bad, but it does require both sides to be equally sharp to be compelling. This film, it's very schmaltzy, it's very hokey, and most of all, it's the type of underdog story that might feel safe enough for nearly every audience, but it's exactly why I wouldn't recommend it to almost anyone. We're going to go ahead and give The Rainmaker 1997 a 46.
A 46%. Wow, under 50.
Yep. Real shame, but...
And I kind of think that there's enough in this genre where you have there's plenty to pluck from that can give you better.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with this kind of lawyery, whatever, law firm type stuff, courtroom stuff, there's just plenty in there. Probably in the 90s.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you brought out Kevin Bacon, A Few Good Men. That was, I forget when that was.
I think 92?
91, 92, yeah.
Yeah.
There's just plenty in there. Mm-hmm. But 46%, okay, Copy. Copy's on the edge here. Just much more going on there than Rumblefish as far as issues with it.
Yes,
that can just keep on.
Both have the bad soundtrack, but I mean, the filmmaking in Rumblefish was able to hold it up in such a special way, such a genuinely good way, and here it's just like, man.
Okay, all right. Well, then that's a 46% for you there for the 97 Rainmaker. Before we get on to the big boy, the now in theaters, just want to take a second here to remind people that Vin and I are going off the value for value model here at the Daily Ratings. So what that means is we're not going to do any advertising here that we're going to kind of shove in your face, whether that be on the podcast or the website. We're also not going to have payment tier structures or paywalls for any of our content. It's not pay to play or pay to access. Everything we do here at the Daily Ratings with the site and podcast, it's all available for you, technically for free. But the idea between value for value is if you're finding what we're doing valuable, using the website, listening to the podcast, if you could, send us some value back our way. It's value for value. So how you do that is through monetary support, of course. And you go to thedailyratings.com and head to the donations tab, and you can find everything there. So if you want to do PayPal, or if you want to do debit or credit, you want to do Venmo, even Satoshis are on there for some people out there listening that do that. All different kinds of ways that you would want to send money in, you can do that, and it's right there on that main page. There's some fun set donations, like buy Vin a movie ticket, join the Gump Club, or be a Godfather. But there's the big value for value button there as well. And that's basically any amount that you want to or can send in, you can. Again, they're not set donations like you need to donate a certain amount. It's whatever amount you want. Everyone has their own finances. Everybody's weekly finances are different from week to week. So if you're just feeling, hey, I've been listening to these guys for a while, I'm checking their site out, just that can mean anything. That can mean $4, that can mean $40, that can mean $400, as big or as little. It really means the world to us. And when you do that, when you donate and show us your value, you become an actual legitimate producer of the Daily Ratings. Just like in Hollywood, when you financially support a project, you're a producer of the project. So everyone who's donated in so far, we consider you a producer. And when you're a producer, you can send in along your producer note. If you have questions, comments, critiques, suggestions for us, you want to just ask us random questions, it doesn't even have to be about movies. Hey, donate something in, become a producer, and write your producer note in. We're going to address it right here on this segment, the producer segment. How you send a note into us is email us at tom.vin@thedailyratings.com. You can email us there when you send in a donation. Big or small, write anything. Like I said, questions, comments, critiques, whatever you want. If you're a producer, that means something special. And we want to, acknowledge what you have to say or think because, well, we care about what you want to say or think. It is that important to us. It's a through line to you. So we want to thank all the producers who have produced here in the past. And this is episode 155. If you want to be an executive producer of episode 156, like I said before, head to the donations tab at thedailyratings.com. All right, Vin, with that, this movie is technically like 45 years in the making. It's been rumbling in our boy Francie's head for a long time. He apparently, I want to go back to a comment you made earlier.
Oh, sure.
About how he's often co-writing with people. He's definitely a writer for his films,
Yep.
but as a co-writer working with a book or whatever. He is solo on this film, but from my understanding is taking inspiration from a lot of different things and people,
Oh, yeah.
but not a specific book to peg it to,
right?
With just a direct author that he can work with. This is all 45 years of internalizing whatever the hell he wants to tell in this film. He sold off part of his Coppola winery to self-fund this. I believe it's reported to be around $120 million self-funded.
Wow.
Like Kevin Costner was kind of self-funded, like partially
sure.
adding to how much that film cost, but this is really it. This is Francis Ford Coppola doing this with his own studio. It's been talked about and not talked about at the same time. I'll also make a note that because he did it himself, when he went and toured this around, took it to the film festival, I forget which one, I think it was Venice, distributors and studios felt it was too much and didn't want to pick it up. So then we didn't even know when we were going to see this film because we didn't have a distributor.
Yep.
We found one. The time is now. Vince saw the movie this past Friday night. It's
been consumed with it.
Megalopolis. It's a big film. It's a big cast. It's a lot going on from my understanding. Can't wait to get into it. Vin, now I felt like I've contributed something, but I'll step back. Let us know how you enjoyed Megalopolis.
Well, listen, there is no shame in not seeing this movie because, I mean, I would have loved to, talk shop on how bad this is, but yeah, it is something else, and ultimately me coming away from it. And a lot of reflection on this. I mean, this had me thinking about the movie nonstop since seeing it. Is that you should probably stay away from it.
Okay.
Yeah, you should probably not bother with this. Folks, it is nonetheless here, and for months I have been anticipating what countless people called a dumpster fire. From selling part of his winery to recent controversy with a fake AI-fueled outrage trailer, there has been no shortage of press around Frankie Coppola's modern epic, but with so much noise, I just had to see it for myself. Megalopolis is a near-future utopian sci-fi epic that attempts to juggle a lot, yet for how much it tries to tell us about society and technology and human ambition, it surprisingly says very little. Like, very little, if not anything at all. As we saw with recent developments in the marketing for the film, the subtitle "A Fable" was added, as if that could tell any of us what the hell the movie experience was going to be. You want to, tell me what a fable is. What am I expecting from a fable? But here I am trying my darndest to summarize this mess. So buckle in. It's a long one. It's probably the longest summary I've ever written.
Okay, here we go.
So, Megalopolis sets us in a fictionalized New York, simply called New Rome. This is one of the countless attempts to compare modern American life to the fall of Rome, something that you will be beaten over your head for the next 2 hours. And I really mean like beaten over your head. The city is party-centric, vain, and obsessed with magnetic billionaires' personalities that run the city with their influence. We also have Lawrence Fishburne as our narrator. In addition to being kind of a minor character, he's the driver for Adam Driver and is responsible for spooning every theme that this film fails at juggling to the audience, because Lawrence Fishburne is just directly spouting it to you.
Okay, gotcha.
And over every scene that has narration. If we want to talk about like probably some of the best narration in Apocalypse Now, this is very bad narration in Megalopolis. This includes Shakespearean quotes, Greek philosophy, and overall the most heavy-handed writing I think I've ever experienced. This feels like a college student's first draft, that it's vomiting words, it's vomiting concepts, that it's just like you could just feel that just like so much wants to get on the paper.
Right.
So much wants to get on the page, and is unfortunately a mess for that exact reason. We do, however, centralize on Adam Driver as our main character, Caesar Catalina, a genius architect that leads the Design Authority. The Design Authority is an organization within the city that clashes with both political and financial factions over control that they have in developing society, developing New York. Primarily, this introduces two groups of stakeholders to the story. Giancarlo Esposito as the mayor of New Rome, which includes his daughter, played by Natalie Emmanuel, who becomes our love interest. And then on the other side, John Voight, a billionaire mogul who, connected through blood to Adam Driver, kind of muddies the waters through messy family drama being pushed into public life. Adam Driver is also a Nobel Prize-winning scientist, in addition to a genius architect, who, for his work developing Megalon, gets the Nobel Prize. Megalon is an entirely unexplained building material that works somewhere in between a new element and a God particle. So I'll do my best to mention Megalon when it matters, and hopes it will revolutionize humanity for all of his work. Folks, if this summary has given you whiplash so far, understand that all of this is pushed towards us in the first 15 minutes alone. The first 15 minutes, we get all of this, which lets the next hour be just like catch-up for the audience to grapple with the confusing elements and terms and factions and characters, while the film pats itself on the back for how clever it is. And oh yeah, I totally forgot, Adam Driver has time-controlling powers that might be real or might be completely imaginary in this. I don't know. That's Megalopolis. I mean this in the most respectful way possible, but I do not think the writing could be any worse here. Like, any worse.
It's that bad. It's that amateurish.
It's such a mess. It also is so self-congratulatory for how smart it thinks it is. Mm-hmm. Coppola shows a surprising amount of amateurish mistakes all over this film, but it might be the worst when it comes to the writing. I would describe the whole experience as sloppy Shakespeare, and by that I mean there are both literally characters expounding Shakespearean quotes, and all sorts of quotes, as well as dialogue sounding just needlessly stilted. The longer this film went on, the more hand-fisted the dialogue became. Sometimes that's because of failed concepts, being kind of low-hanging fruit that it thinks it's clever and says how clever it thinks it is and says how much high art it thinks the movie is. And other times it's just flat-out bad George Lucas-level trash. And both are not good. Both are really not good. Seriously, there is not a single thing that isn't fully spelled out for us. Not an ounce of subtlety is found between the philosophical babble or the constant waxing poetic around Rome. It feels like the kitchen sink exploded onto the script for this movie. You know, I don't think I would have just such a problem with it either if it didn't congratulate itself so often. There are many moments where high art is commented on in the story, and awkwardly and very undeservedly, you feel the script pointing back at itself. And I felt this was excess, this was vanity, this was everything that I didn't want from Coppola. And I feel like a lot of the movies we covered this week and his career, he was trying to escape. He was trying to be in, even if it's a weird little island, him filming in the Philippines with his beard growing long, you know what I mean?
Right.
He's not in the box, and this is in the box and in a bad box. Like, it's real bad. I just can't tell you how off-putting this movie is, of saying something smart and then almost leaning towards the audience and saying, "Hey, wasn't that smart?"
Yeah, I mean that's rough.
Yeah,
and it's not the. I mean, we've gotten into that a little bit with movies too. Yeah. It's not the first time this has come up with a director, and there's something about that is automatically just puts a bad taste in your mouth.
Yep.
Because you can't get away from it, and it's a turnoff for you. Just feel. You're annoyed with the people that made the film. You're annoyed at the fact that the film is now worse.
Yep.
It leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Absolutely.
All around.
And I feel like it also, this stilted dialogue, the Shakespeare robots, the sloppy Shakespeare, the George Lucas writing.
Right.
It's something there that, like, no acting performance is particularly horrible. I wish I could comment on Jon Voight, but he's very much in a spoiler reason why he's bad. But we're just going to leave that there for anyone that maybe sees this movie. But the acting, I almost can't blame it because it's just you just tell that like they are burdened.
Anything.
Yeah, they're burdened with what they have to carry for this script. The huge amount of world building that falls flat. I would say, crazy enough, best actor of the whole film is probably Shia LaBeouf.
There's no way.
He's not really good, but he's just like, it's the most entertaining piece on screen.
Well, that's more than shocking, first of all. That is more than shocking for Vincent Daly to say that. Hilarious.
Yeah, definitely hilarious.
Now,
we're a little loopy after Megalopolis.
I love that Shia is in this with Jon Voight, the reunited once again, those two. So we are led to believe, just through trailers alone and things like that Adam Driver is taking up a big chunk as far as percentage of screen goes.
Yes.
How does our boy Driver do? Because he does crazy. He's in a movie like 65, which we can't stand.
Right.
Then he's in Marriage. It's Marriage Story, a must watch.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Then he's in
Ferrari.
Right. Ferrari.
Somewhere in the middle.
Does that Annette movie on Amazon?
Right.
He's not afraid to get weird on screen, or when a movie that might not hit with the big audience. He's not afraid to go there. So his screen time is there. How is he?
I think he's okay here. I think, again, it's where the script burdens him the most because he's supposed to be this figure embodying the philosophies he wants to breed into kind of society through his architecture, through his discoveries.
If you're annoyed with something that's happening on screen, you're not rolling your eyes at him. It's what he's set up to do.
Bingo.
Good.
Bingo.
Okay. Well, that's something at least.
There's also the character is interesting. Catalina is not like a wet towel. He's not a blank slate. He is a complicated character because he has a lot of opinions on things and is a little bit of a party boy and created a god particle that's gonna and very wealthy. Also, the ire of a lot of what the film tries to say about obsession with billionaires and type of kind of Roaring Twenties criticism.
Sure.
Driver is all of that, but is also, I think, like the first time in a while that he was just clearly Adam Driver. I'm not trying to conflate who his characters are and who he is as a person, but it really did feel like he was much more natural in a way that we haven't seen for his Italian ones like Ferrari and House of Gucci.
Right. White Noise we saw him in.
Sure.
I like that movie.
Yeah, right. But it just feels like he kind of just showed up to set and knew the script well enough and got the job done. So
probably what he was thinking too. He's thinking, well, I got the job done. I can get away from this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why if you flash back to one of the many standing ovations that were part of the marketing of films now. One of the standing ovations, the camera was really focusing on him. He pushed it away to Coppola. That looks like a humble decision before seeing the movie. That looks like a mitigation, a risk mitigation after the movie. He's like, get me off this camera.
That's good.
I got to move on to style because the movie is, again, just a kitchen sink of everything. The style is like a rare utopian sci-fi. We don't really get utopian sci-fis out of the 60s and 70s, but mixes in kind of like this heavy Art Deco influence. While it looks interesting in parts, the style pairing isn't exactly the brilliant decision it thinks it is, and worst of all, is executed so poorly it wouldn't make a difference even if it was the first to do it, blending these styles of sci-fi and Art Deco. Neo-Art Deco to Coppola means we get plenty of shots panning over classic skyscrapers of New York, and the new utopian buildings made out of Megalon look like a glossy AI nightmare. The world building here is where the film seriously lost me, though, because I love almost any sci-fi on a certain level.
To an extent, yeah.
For me, it's design, it's imagination in crafting a world. It's world building, really. That's why I like fantasy as well. It's like, wow, what are you doing with to make a world fleshed out that is clearly not reality? Here, the execution has such little thought put into it. It's honestly, it's insulting. Old-fashioned newspapers are used next to holograms. The Saturday night thing you do is go out to a Coliseum match with literal f***ing chariots paired next to deep fake footage that is designed to stir controversy and drama. The world building was the clearest spot where the experience for me started to feel like it was just very much being made by an old man. This is trying to be sci-fi where the design of its world betrays that because its world means nothing and informs us of nothing. And yet is preaching us to say that it's saying everything. It really thinks it is like solving humanity itself. It is solving society itself. And I can't tell you how little it actually says. This uninspired design cascades alongside some of the worst production decisions I could ever imagine. Once again, comes off shockingly amateurish coming from Coppola. The CGI straight up looks like Spy Kids CGI. Wow. I'm not even joking. I know I've made that joke a few times. It's real here.
That's crazy because, it's self-budgeted, but a big budget still.
Yeah, fair.
When you're over $100 million, come on.
Absolutely. There's just something about actors being too real up front and the backgrounds just looking too fake.
Oh.
That's the Spy Kids CGI if I had to clock it in.
Okay, yeah.
So much of the composition of scenes feels lifeless and pointless. And unrealistic not in a stylized way, not in like a cartoonish way, but instead feeling like shortcuts made from a man that self-funded this project. Mm-hmm. Like that is financially a little bit more on the line than a normal artist would be for this. There are two infuriating examples of this over the course of the movie. First, there is a car tailing scene that is Natalie Emmanuel following Adam Driver and then Shia LaBeouf following them both. This scene is presented cutting between 3 different car interior shots with no outside cars, no shots outside the cars, and is so disjointed, I was really questioning if it was done by a second unit director. It was done in such a way, so clearly in the edit did I see that these scenes were filmed individually in the cars by themselves. And the fact that you don't cut to some sort of outside footage, some sort of, framing technique to say, okay, and they're here, and I know where characters are, I know the stakes of the scene. I mean, it made me question if this is the same guy that directed The Conversation, because clearly he knew how to make stakes in a tailing scene, Also, a key piece to why that scene looked so ass just wasn't clear to me until later in the runtime. This film has a lot of aerial footage of New York, whether it's drone, helicopter, however they did it. And there's just next to zero shots of street-level life.
That's a shame.
Most importantly, not a lot of extras in this film. And if you're going to sell this, Roaring 20s utopia sci-fi, I kind of need extras. These are very empty sets that would go on. The Spy Kids CGI. Very empty sets. It's clearly 2 people on a green screen.
Yeah, that's actually really bad.
Yeah.
You need that sense of mega-ness.
Yes, exactly.
In Megalopolis.
If this is going to be grandiose, it's got to be that. It's got to live up to it. This culminates in what I think was the single worst scene in the whole film, again, there's one around Jon Voight's character that is very close, but it's for if you happen to watch this movie. That's a treat for you. You can see this worst scene in the trailer, though. There is a minor plot point that there's a Soviet satellite that is going to crash. It's decaying in orbit, and there's a fireball coming down onto the city. And as this fireball is coming down, you can see the shadow of crowds of people freaking out on the street kind of projected upward onto the many skyscraper buildings that he's obsessed with in this film. The worst thing about this is that the footage that is cut to when it shows the street or kind of the sweeping shot up of Manhattan, there are no people in the streets. He must have shot this at crack of dawn. And what that does to just ruin the entire scene of what they're trying to get across of the entire city is freaking out. It is pandemonium. And there's a taxi cab turning slowly on the street level shot. It is so disconnected and so cheap and so like it's so amateurish.
Yeah, it
like,
saps you of everything.
It saps it of everything.
Of anything real, especially if you're dealing with Utopia, New York. You have this Roaring Twenties, like you said. You've got the sci-fi element. You have this New Rome element. You want to feel the hustle and bustle, the rush of a city.
Yes,
it should be the backbone of the film almost. It should be a character of itself, just like the jungle is. The Vietnam War is a character of itself in Apocalypse
Phenomenal,
Now.
Tom. Phenomenal. There has to be something to sell the reality, and
right.
alongside like the really poor style decisions and like the really shoddy like CGI and like bad technical issues this has. There's not. It doesn't sell me on the world. Just so bad.
He can do the real jungle, not the concrete jungle.
Yeah, he can't do
or the Megalopolis.
Right.
What's the element called?
Megalon.
Megalon. Yes.
Yeah.
The Megalon jungle.
The Megalon jungle. Yeah. It's an AI jungle. That's what it is. It's just truly mind-blowing how the same man that directed The Godfather did this. Like, if you compare the baptism scene to any moment in this film, I just simply could not tell you they're the same director. Like, if you put them side by side in some reality, some Twilight Zone episode that I'm judging these two films and have no prior knowledge, I would not tell you they're the same director. For like 3/4 of the movie, I was saying, no way is this below a 40. It's a mess for sure, but at least it's better than like something like Babylon from 2022, like similarly messy movies, similarly like trying very grand scope of what they're talking about, but really fall flat. But by the end of this movie, I was walking out. I was pegging this at like a 12%, Tom. It really shit the bed in the last quarter.
Well, I know you saw this with the little birdie. The little birdie tweeted in my ear about that. Basically, this is how it went. It says, Vin was, he was pretty angry. After the movie was done.
I was.
Like, angry was what he used.
I was escalating in the car. I was getting angry. I was working myself up. Oh, man. And since seeing it a few days ago, I've not stopped thinking about it. Getting more and more angry like I was in the car. But also trying to think of a solution to kind of fix it. I'm not too sure about the proposed musical spin. I don't know. Is this still like...
No, I'm confused by that. There's just too much news going on around Francis Ford Coppola right now.
Oh, okay.
And he just made his movie theater. He just made his new hotel that's movie themed and stuff. There's a lot going on with it right now.
There's a lot. But I think one would be reworking this as an even longer film. I know that's crazy to say.
It's sitting at 218 right now.
Or maybe a TV miniseries. It needs more runway.
Right,
It really does need more runway. It's just too grand of what it's trying to accomplish. And again, the reality of it is that it's a kitchen sink and then achieves nothing of what it goes for.
Yeah.
So I'd take a boring, Snyder Cut epic, 5 hours long, whatever you need to make it make sense and make it hit, because it doesn't hit at all now. Not that I want to spend more time with it. Trust me, I don't. But all of the problems here in concepts and scenes are just given zero room to breathe. Compare this to Conversation, like I said, and it is night and day. I think with more runway in the story, you can cut out most of this heavy-handed dialogue moments, this heavy-handed narration. Don't feed me the themes, and let those themes marinate on its own.
Yeah.
Let us just kind of sit with the city called New Rome, and don't tell me it's just like, hey, you remember Rome collapsed? Isn't it funny how we're kind of mimicking that in America? Yeah, maybe don't do that. Sure, the dialogue will still be a mess. Sure, the style and effects will still look like trash, but there will be something worth it to seeing this through the kitchen sink it's trying to go for the story, because the audience won't be told that they are consuming high art. Right now, the story is scrambling because it has to feed us all this shit, and it almost is insecure in the fact of like, it's not sure if you understand its high art and that it deserves to be listened to. Megalopolis is a movie that thinks it says... This is really what it boiled down to. I really
go ahead.
really tried to boil it down to one thing. Megalopolis is a movie that thinks because it says bread and circuses and pairs it with a near future society, that it's a striking work of art. Yeah, fucking right. I wouldn't be this blood-boiling mad if Coppola wasn't trying to masquerade this as high art or have the film pat itself on the back every moment it pulls out a quote from history. But having your film attempt to say so much, the film ironically says nothing at all. We're going to go ahead and give Megalopolis a 26.
26? That almost sounds high from what you were saying, but this is deeply personal for you, I feel. I mean, you're really upset by this one.
I was so upset.
Well, you can't say you're not well thought out here on this. You've certainly sat with this now. Sat with it maybe a little too long.
Yeah, maybe.
We got to scrub this.
I marinated too much.
Man, oh man. I mean... And you knew the risk that this film was.
Absolutely.
Like I know
even when I texted you, you said not surprising but surprising.
Right.
And I think it's kind of like, all right, well, I can't really I can't really be that mad because it's like I knew that everyone was saying it was a dumpster fire, but
because you had briefly given me some of your thoughts, very briefly, and I think I said. Not surprising, but still shocking.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say this. I'm not surprised with how this film came to be, but it is shocking that the guy who made Godfather Part 1 and 2 made this. That's the shocking part.
Yeah, the path, the slippery slope to get to the dumpster fire was what shocked me.
Right.
Because it's like, I expected it to be messy. I expected maybe, performances to derail something here. No, it was all in like very amateurish director moves of just like how do you make a scene make sense in the edit and the composition and how to avoid making something feel disjointed, and then that doesn't even touch on like the story elements. And I mean, I went on about this film. I'm not going to talk anymore. But this was a real moment for me because I knew I was in trouble when I was looking at what was in the 20s. I was like, all right, Rebel Moon's a 22, Avatar's a 27, maybe worse than Avatar. It's just like this was bad.
Wow. Okay. And 26% is a bad movie, folks. And it doesn't even sound like so bad it's good because it's so frustrating it's bad.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
so frustrating it is that bad.
Yeah. And preachy and eye-rolling and cringy and... Oof.
Shocking for all the bad reasons.
Yeah.
Especially not surprised. If you were around a woman that's over 9 months pregnant, right? Okay. And then all of a sudden she starts to give birth next to you.
Right.
You're not surprised, but it's utterly shocking to your system.
I love that, yeah.
And, 5 days later, you'll still be thinking about it.
I can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
I can't believe I went to see Megalopolis.
But man,
that's perfect. That's perfect.
A great readout. I mean, I knew you had a lot for it. I'd love just hearing you run with it because, again, you can't say you're not thought out on this one. And you've explained this very well. I think you've given us a good taste and a setup for what this movie is.
Yeah.
And gave us some of the story beats so we could at least follow along if we're interested in seeing it.
Right.
Especially if that much is unanswered. It sounds like you've answered at least the important things that you can tether us to something.
Yeah. I think realistically there might be a morbid curiosity that spawns from this, but don't let morbid curiosity force you to see a movie and not like universal praise like Apocalypse Now. Like watch the good ones.
Absolute wild.
I get watching a bad movie is enjoyable in some ways to shit on it then, but don't let the good works of Coppola sleep. Godfather and Apocalypse Now being the top of that.
Wow. And I think you said that perfectly because there is so much there. Again, almost the most regarded as far as one of the best runs a director ever had.
Yeah.
And like I said, it starts with that writing credit really on Patton that he does. But, man, Vin, looking at these films, how far we have fallen.
Right.
Any lasting notes here? Are you exhausted? We're going to roll credits. Anything for next week? What's up?
Well, the only thing I'll note is that we are going into October, so looking to get some spooky movies in. And we got a big release. We got Joker 2 coming up.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, we'll see. That's I don't know how that's going to go.
Yeah,
I think it's going to go one way or the other. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's either going to be this or it's going to be that.
Yeah, and people have mostly been saying it's leaning towards bad, but I don't know. For me, it feels like a direct response from Todd Phillips, I believe is the director. Everyone was critiquing Joker 1 for, it's just Taxi Driver. It's just King Comedy. It's the Scorsese rip. I feel like making a crazy jukebox musical out of Joker is what you get as a response to that criticism.
Interesting.
So
we're going to see. You do love Lady Gaga. So I'm excited for this. That's next week.
Yep, that's next week.
That actually is a big week. So, okay. Vin, thank you. so much for putting the time into these reviews. These are big, meaty reviews, especially for 3 of these films. I love, once again, that Apocalypse Now has been rated on the site. It's great that we've covered it and really got into Coppola on this podcast. So great reviews, great work. Thanks for stopping by here tonight for us. And folks at home, we'll quick run it down one more time. We have The Conversation with a 71%, Apocalypse Now with an 85, and Two Shoes, Two Lace. We have Rumblefish with a 67, The Rainmaker, a 46, and how far they drop. We have Megalopolis with a 26%. So, folks, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you right back here next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. And hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or get the word out and tell a friend about us. And just a reminder that the Daily Ratings is completely producer-supported. We want to stay away from advertising, and we don't want to have any paywalls or tier structures or subscriptions. It's all just value for value. So, are you finding value in any of the things that we're doing here at the Daily Ratings? Then become a producer and donate whatever amount of value that is. Just go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com, and while you're there, be sure to check out the massive amount of films that Vince has rated. All right, thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast.